Hello, everyone's Forest Focus as we enter into the final few days before the Premier League finally starts. Transfers on the agenda, but Cass, Textor and Crystal Palace aren't, for now at least. So how will Nottingham Forest fare and how are they shaping up? With all that in mind, it's great to welcome back a friend of the show. It's Seb Hutchinson to discuss it all. Seb, how are you?
I'm very good, Matt. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you with us. Are you rested up? You became, you did the Euros. England made it all the way to lifting the trophy. I'm sure it was a great experience for you, but have you recovered from it all now?
I don't think I'll recover from that. I mean, it was an amazing experience to see them do it again. But the thing is, when you're a father as well, you come off this busy period and you're back with the family, and it's just as busy. So it doesn't make any difference. It's just constantly doing things. The chance to put your feet up, I don't think that exists. I don't think that will exist for another, 30 years. I'm not suggesting that's when I die. I'm just saying. So I might not be able to put my feet up in 30 years. Who knows?
Yeah, I expect kids don't understand that. I was tired after commentating on all those penalties. They come home and they want, no, you've got to play with me now and all that kind of stuff. So I
100%.
can imagine that. Yeah, certainly. Let's talk a bit about obviously mostly Forest, a little bit of Premier League stuff. We'll do some transfers as mentioned. Let's looking at the bigger picture of Forest over the summer. We were saying before we started recording, they've been front and center. It felt like to me for a lot of things, and you seem to agree. So I guess outside of the bubble, they've broken through as well with what's been going on. What have you made of the summer for Forest, first of all?
I'll say it straight off the bat. I hate summer stories. I find it. The reason why I hate it is because within, I'd say, 5 minutes of the first match of the season, first competitive game of the season, all of that gets forgotten unless something magically bad went wrong in the summer, as in you lost a really big player who then goes on to a rival or somebody competing with you and does amazingly. And you look back to that summer and you think, why did we let them go? Or you've signed somebody that's not worked out, or you haven't signed players. I mean, that's the big one. Oh, we should have signed this, we should have signed that. But then there are teams that don't sign players and do very well. So I just find the summer really difficult. And it's probably the time when supporters argue within their own fan base more than any other time as well, because it's the reset. It's that period after the season's just ended where they look back and say, what went well, what went wrong? And we look to the next season and we say, right, have we done enough business, or have we got the right manager, or is the ownership correct? And I think for Forest in this summer, if you have this added element of this rivalry that's just come out of nowhere in the last few months between Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, I would have thought, would that ever have been a rivalry at some point? Now, there are level-headed supporters who don't see that as a thing, but it's become this sideshow. And it's part of this whole, I'd say, I know there are rivalries that have been born out of incidents, Brighton and Palace, but I think it's a newer thing now because of the whole social media element of discussion, whereby things to do with money, transfers, people balancing the books, and stuff that's nothing to do with what's going on the pitch become sideshows that fans get upset about. And I just think, trust me, the moment that first ball is kicked at the City ground, and if you start well, everyone will forget all the nonsense in the summer. And if you start badly, everybody will forget the nonsense in the summer. They'll just be looking at the present day and thinking, right now, okay, the ball's been kicked, and now we have to go and buy somebody still, or we don't need anybody still. And it's all about in the moment. What I like about during the season is that change happens far quicker. There's a game and then it's on to the next one and then it's on to the next one. Whereas in the summer with no matches and friendlies, the results of friendlies mean absolutely nothing. That it just feels it drags on for a long period of time. You think, oh, we haven't got that right winger, we haven't got that centre half, we haven't got that goalkeeper, whatever it might be. It just drags and drags and drags. But to come round to your first question, interestingly enough, this whole business with what tournament Forest are going to be playing in Europe next season, and that rivalry with Crystal Palace over this issue has transcended outside of those clubs for sure, because it's something we've not really seen that much before.
Yeah, reading, Dave from Arnold or Pete from Bulwell saying about the intricacies of multi-club ownership and whether John Textor exerted, influence over Crystal Palace and all that kind of nonsense is not what we should be talking about, and none of us are experts on, really. And Palace fans arguing the same back and forth as if they know exactly what's going on as well. We said this on yesterday's podcast. It's the most ridiculous, boring affair that we were all thoroughly sick of, and it got way too personal and stupid. So
yeah. I'm glad, like I said, level-minded people who look at the picture outside of this stuff and realize even if you think it's important to you, you have to ask yourself why. Why is this element important to you? I don't understand. I think from a Palace point of view, they'll be really upset about how it's ended, obviously, because they wanted to be in the Europa League. And from a Forest point of view, it's almost they're in the competition that they probably should have got in based on the position they were in at the very least at the back end of last season. Obviously, we'll get onto that. I just look at it overall and think if you offered both these clubs this position over a year ago, they would have bitten your hand off. So it's funny how football works.
One of the first things you said was about 5 minutes after the final whistle, it's all forgotten, and that kind of thing. I wonder if we haven't discussed this on the podcast, and we should have done, whether if it might be slightly different with Forest, because as you say, we should have been in the Champions League, really. I remember you being on here and every other guest saying, oh, Forest are going to do it, they're going to do it. They didn't. Do you think that has a hangover for the players that were there last season, or can they shake it off and you just hit that hard reset button when we play Brentford on Sunday?
Yeah, they just go again. I think they'll look back at it and think, I think the disappointment will come from the fact as how many opportunities we get to be in that position again. And we've seen the investment made by clubs who are in that Champions League mix this summer. I mean, it's been massive. So Forest are never going to be able to keep up with that, the state of how things are at the moment. So that's probably the slight regret. But at the same time, you have to remember that a season is a season. So if you start well, obviously you have that good feeling. But there's also the debate if you started well, it might mean that you've put too much into the first part of the season, both physically and emotionally, and you're going to have a drop off. If you start the season slowly, it could be players are missing, and then you build up a head of steam and you finish strongly. So if we'd flipped it and Forest had finished strongly and got themselves into Europe, the tone would be completely different. So that's what it feels like. I don't think the players will be too concerned by that, because at the end of the day, you're going to have big European nights. And I think about it, what does the Champions League? The Champions League means Nottingham Forest, a competition that they've won before, and it has that connection. But it's a competition that they're not going to win. They wouldn't. Let's put it this way: it'd be very small the chance of Nottingham Forest winning the Champions League if they qualified it next season. So with that process of having that massive, elongated group stage element, league phase, and then you have those big teams coming to the City Ground and stuff. But they could come, you could lose those games. It feels a bit. You're in the ground thinking, "Oh, it's all very well seeing PSG, but they're spanking us 3-0, and we have a big game of the weekend." What the Europa League does is, I think it has an edge of a competition that is winnable for Forest. The format change has helped sides that qualify for it. Look at Spurs last season, because they don't get those Champions League sides dropping out. And you have to think now, actually, there's an argument to say it could be easier for us to win the Europa League. In fact, I could say it probably is easier for us to win the Europa League than qualify for Europe in the Premier League via the league position. And every team you face in that competition, I don't think you'll go into I don't care who it is, because I've looked at all the teams in it. I don't think you'll go into, I mean, interesting enough, if you draw Leon, that would be funny. But if you, there you go. Look at that. That was just right on cue. I was just giving you time to bring it up. I don't think, there are names, big European names there, but I don't think Forest will go into those games thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, we're so overawed by our opposition. I mean, this is a big European giant with massive players. And when I say giant, I'm talking about the quality of players in their team, not the name, because there are big clubs in there. I just think they'll look at that and think, right, this is a competition we can go deep into. You have to have the squad for it. You'd think you have to have the squad for it. It could be, well, as this is going to be asked through the season, I'm sure. Would you accept a Tottenham season if it meant that you won the Europa League at the end of it? I'm talking about Premier League position, going through that. I know Spurs had a really bad league season, but they didn't look like they were going to go down, really. Let's be honest. So you're languishing right down in the bottom of the league, but you're not going to go down, but you win the Europa League. I'll ask you this now because I'm sure it'll be asked during the season if things are going well.
Hang on, I'll take that down. Yeah, I definitely would. Because the only condition is you've got to know you're going to win the Europa League. Like if you,
absolutely,
if you're Man
United,
United,
losing in the final.
Exactly. If you're Man United, you're coming off the back of the most honking season of all honking seasons. I suppose for a club of Forest size and history, there's obviously two parts to our history. There's the European Cup winning part, and then there's the kind of most of the 40 years that followed. And for us to win a Europa League would be, incredible. And I think we could. I think you're right. I'll just bring that graphic up actually, and I think it's sort of the best of both worlds in a way because, like you say, you're not going to be playing PSG, Barcelona, Madrid every week, but you are going to play a Roma or a Porto at home, hopefully, and then you might have enough games against Paphos or Larnaca or someone that you can get through, and then if you get through the group, and then anything can happen, I think. So, yeah, it's a great adventure.
Are you just bringing that one up because you just want to see it again? You just want to look and think. Hold on a minute. From semi-final League One playoff semi-finals against Yeovil, all of a sudden, right now we're back at where we feel we should be belonging, hosting some of these clubs, and then building from that. And of course, if you win this competition, you're in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's. We always have a habit in football. Obviously, you want to keep progressing, you want to keep improving, you just want to stay at the top or get to the top. And I think that's healthy. I think that's part. You should have that feeling. It's the pursuit of happiness, isn't it? Football's the constant pursuit of happiness. So yeah, I get that. I never criticize supporters thinking we should do better. We should do better. But at the same time, you do have to just take stock every now and again and just sort of think, okay, this is good. This is good. 23 years or whatever away from the big league, we're in it now. And I don't think much of our discussion is going to be about relegation, if any of it, which is not a situation we thought just over a year or so ago.
Yeah, I don't think it is. We did our predictions yesterday, and I think our predictions range from 8th for the ultra optimistic to 13th, I think. And I'd still say 13th is a very successful measured season, certainly from where we were. I suppose I should ask you about the impact of Europe, though, and to what degree it will hurt Forest. Thursday, Sunday is, not a fun recipe for players. I think one of the former players who's on here regularly said, I think he played in Europe for Celtic or something. And he was saying how players hate it Thursday, Sunday. And I wonder how much, mentally and physically that comes to impact you, especially if you start the season slowly. I don't think we will because we've got good fixtures. But do you see a scenario where it does really hurt Forest, not to the point of relegation, but the Premier League does take a realistic backseat to some degree?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, yes. But you have to think, what's it harming particularly? Are you thinking harming in terms of you dropping into a relegation battle or harming your chances of getting into Europe again via a league place? I think if it's the relegation thing, I don't think it will affect Forest in that sense. But for getting into those European places, it almost certainly will. So there will be a point in the season where you may just find yourself thinking, right, we're not going to go down, but we need to put our eggs into this basket now, the European basket. Especially if you're into the knockout stages, you have favourable draws. Maybe one of the main challenges has been knocked out, or they're being drawn against each other. You might even be in a position where we are obviously looking quite far ahead, but you're facing Aston Villa or something in the latter stages, and Villa are still in the Champions League race and you're not. And there's that game and then you have a game where it might move you from 10th to 9th, and Villa are right in there. In that situation again, you might just completely sack off that league game. And then just go, right, this is... But, we shouldn't... That's what I was going to say, foreshadow there. We shouldn't look ahead that far, I don't think.
No. If we were, though, I do wonder if the owner's pragmatic enough to do that, or he's just pure drive and ambition would get in the way, arguably, and he wants it all, which is great, but also a bit of a double-edged sword, as I've often said.
You know the answer to that. You also know he'll be in the office, Nuno's office, the day before that Europa League game saying, so Gibbs-White starting this game, correct? You know, it will be a bit like that. And it might also play a part in January as well. You know, how well have you done before Christmas? If it's looked tricky, then Marinakis might actually think, let's get some more bodies in to help with this process, especially if you think, you're teetering around the relegation situation. And it will be fascinating to see this season, you know, the investment Leeds and Sunderland in particular are making to try and get themselves to stay in the league. I don't think that's going to necessarily make Forest quake, but there'll be sides around that we thought did really well last season, Bournemouth, Brentford, who might be in a situation where they feel nervous. And what's fascinating about this is, I can say all this now, we'll learn a lot from that first game for Forest, because that is, I think that's the perfect marker game to get the ball rolling. Because if you go out there and you thrash Brentford, all of a sudden people will be like, right, okay, now we know what we're up to. If it's an awkward game, I mean, Brentford games usually are awkward for everybody, or traditionally were, but they've had so many departures that if you struggle in that game, then it could be that feeling of, and last season was weird, wasn't it? Because you had that start where there were mixed results in there, where there were games we thought, well, we should be winning this, and there were draws, and then, you know, you win at Anfield. So it's the toss up, isn't it, at the start of the season? But it does set the tone massively for how supporters feel, and I think how it could affect your European campaign, obviously.
I'll ask you a bit more about that Brentford game in one moment. Just before we do that, a word for the Trent navigation. All the first 3 games are on Sky. It shows how big we are, I guess. So you can watch them all at the Nav, open for breakfast from 9. Father's has got his pre-match quiz, all the build-up, all the team news. Pizza and barbecue kitchen is open after. So make a day of it, get your dinner there. You can watch it outdoor and indoor if you can get in there to watch it on the screens. As I say, all games, TV games are shown live. And you don't need to book, just show up, although there might be a queue. So get there early because it's always rammed. Seb's nodding along, love it. Right. What do you make of the Brentford situation around Keith Andrews? Is such an interesting appointment. So often these appointments flop. I suppose I think of, I'm going back to like Mick McCarthy's assistant coming in at Wolves, and it just been horrific. So horrific, I can't remember his name.
Terry Connor.
Yes, Terry Connor.
Okay.
But then the flip side of that is Thomas Frank replacing, Dean Smith and doing a fantastic job. So maybe I'm just remembering all the bad incidents, but promoting the set piece coach feels very risky, doesn't it?
It's Brentford, though, isn't it? So are they in a position to go out and get a big coach, a big name coach, a big personality coach, or do they think we'll continue what we've been doing, which is essentially, that what happened with Thomas Frank? They're now trying to do with Keith Andrews. I think obviously Thomas Frank had a more extensive coaching career than Andrews has. But, I've worked with him as in the capacity as a commentator, and he was a co-com a few times, and he's a sharp football mind. And he's somebody, I think, I like the way he talks in the game as well. He's very measured. And I don't think he's going to come out with silly sound bites or anything that makes people go, what is this guy talking about? I just think he's somebody who's going to be, it'll be a familiar face around the people there already. And I think Brentford might need that stability to get themselves going. But I do obviously have concerns for them in terms of quality and numbers. I mean, they've been a club since they come up where they've always had players available, in the routes in which they sign players in the B team setup. That always have players available, and you don't feel like the drop off is that massive necessarily. They've had their key players, but to lose, your midfield fulcrum, Force and Bumo was on that right side. Obviously, Wiss has been looking for a way out, and then to lose the manager as well and backroom staff and elements like that, it's a tough one, and it does make them prime for people thinking, they could have a big issue here. And it doesn't. I don't think it takes that much in the Premier League. Sometimes it's the losing of the players that you want to. I think sometimes some can be successful by not signing many, but just keeping people. And I think for Newcastle, obviously they're quite upset at the moment because they haven't been able to sign players. As it stands, I mean, it's changing every second. they haven't lost too many of their big names, right? So, and they've added, Elanga, he's a good player, isn't he? They've added him. And then a team like Fulham say, no one's really spoken about Fulham all summer. And generally people don't, they go under the radar, but they've kept key players and they'll probably pick up one or two then. So does that then mean they'll do quite well? So it's hard to gauge it overall. And so, that's how I look at it with them. That's why I said it's really interesting, because you've had big players going out and players coming in. I don't think people look at Forest and think they're in trouble. They haven't lost those big names yet. Gibbs-White stayed, which was one of the great turnarounds. I mean, the way it came out of nowhere, the Tottenham bid, and then the way it flipped, I think it's unbelievable. You guys must have been doing somersaults. You must have thought, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? Oh my God, he's going on. Oh my God, he's staying. And then there he is with Marinakis over his shoulder. That will be something used as an image for years to come as well. Having a player do an interview not long after they were about to leave, then saying they're going to be staying, and the owner's just there. It's just there next to them. I just thought it was absolutely amazing. But yeah, that sets up for this weekend. Brentford, Palace away, West Ham at home. I think if you're picking fixtures, maybe those might be the ones you'd pick for the first 3 games, because there's enough edge to them. They're games in which if you were to draw all 3 games, on paper there'd be disappointment, but you wouldn't feel like, oh my God, we're falling behind already. I don't think so. Whereas if you'd face the promoted teams in the first few matches, or you had trips to Anfield or the Etihad or something, and all of a sudden you have those games and then you're on 0 points, that would be a cause for concern. But these are the matches here. I just think you can come out of those unbeaten, whatever the results. I think it's just you think, right, okay, we're set now, we're good. You'd like to get that win under your belt, because you don't want to be going to Arsenal in that sort of situation without a win. But I think they're a good set of fixtures to start with. But then ask me that again in a month, who knows?
No, on paper they really are, aren't they? I mean, you hopefully, touch wood, you win the first 2 home games. Palace was going to be a sort of bloodbath in a sense because of all the nonsense, and whatever happens there happens. Arsenal,
they got the extra games, haven't they? They've got the extra games.
Either side, ironically, they've taken our fixtures. Yeah. So, and Glasner will play a strong team in those, because I don't think we'll just do anything else. So I don't think that helps us. And then Arsenal, what will be, will be. We can get something there on a good day, certainly. And then you've got Sunderland and Burnley in consecutive games, who by then have hopefully been softened up a bit, because if you play them early, like first game, then they've got momentum. 4 or 5 games. Hopefully they might have had that welcome to the Premier League realisation. I mean, we'll come on to them certainly, but it does feel quite good. Quick side question, probably is it almost a yes or no, because as we record, this is all the Isak madness. Do you think he'll play for Newcastle again or not?
It doesn't look likely, does it? I mean, how can you go back after this sort of situation, not training or not going on tours, training at your old club, then making statements that you don't want to play, and then whether he'll go to Liverpool immediately is interesting, because it could be something that happens right near the end. I find it interesting all the way around. I just don't know how it's got to this position. To me, mate, it feels like he probably feels he was promised something. But all the talk publicly from Newcastle, because the whole Isak chat was going on last season, there were teams, Liverpool and Arsenal, saying, well, he's the perfect striker for us. He's the perfect striker for us. And Newcastle every time just saying he's not for sale. He's got all these years left on his contract. And so, I always look at these things multiple ways. I think footballers, they obviously feel that they have to grab the moment, and when Newcastle offered him his contract to get him to this point where he's a few years away, he obviously went, right, I'm happy to sign that now because I want that security. And at that point in time, he might be a bit unsure. He's had injury issues and that sort of thing. But then based off the season he's just had, and he's right at the top of his game, and people are looking at him as one of the best strikers in the world, he's thinking, right, strike while the iron's hot. Maybe in January had that conversation, and they said, and they probably, I imagine they said to him, if a good bid comes in, of course you can leave. But what's a good bid? 150 million. I think if it came to that figure, I think you should take that for sure. Even if he was happy to stay, I think there's an element as a club, you just sort of say, right, for one footballer, is it worth it? When what could Newcastle do with 150 million in this PSR situation? They could, the way they spread the money around, they could get 4 players. You know, and then that makes them stronger. You know, you didn't. They had him last season. They won the League Cup, but ultimately, you know, it's more than just one player. A team is more than just one player, and players come and go, and players have moments, and you can become a legend at a club, of course, but the club is always bigger, always. And even if he does go, Newcastle supporters just have to remember that there'll be somebody else. Somebody else will come through, and the disappointment in not getting players is temporary. You know, a team can get a player. Look, you know, Chelsea had Salah and De Bruyne on their books at one point. You know, Gyökeres was at Brighton not that long ago, and it didn't work out for those players at those clubs, and they go somewhere else, and it happens. Who knows? You know, somebody, you know, Igor Jesus might come through, and all of a sudden he's a 70, 80 million pound player by the end of the season. You know, that's what you're hoping. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a sorry situation, because I just felt that they're so good up their supporters in terms of getting behind a player and idolizing a player and the murals and everything else. But this feels like a broken relationship now, and it would be strange, especially the only way I can see him coming back is if they just don't sign that new striker. And I think that's what they're in the process. They're trying to get that new striker. And the moment they get that striker, it will all start to kick on.
I just wonder if a Saudi-backed club, or a Saudi club, which is effectively the Saudi government, buys Isak to help out Newcastle, who are a Saudi club, and it's all a bit murky, and that's where we end up, and they're financially all right, and he gets his way, and then he goes to Liverpool in a few years, and that's what might be what happens, but we'll see. Interestingly, this leads into Forest a bit. You mentioned Visser, Isak. They both kicked up a fuss. Morgan, to his credit, didn't, and he stayed, which is a big piece of our jigsaw. Elanga's gone, and Ndoye's arrived, and a couple of others around Jesus and Jai Cunha and guys like that. I mean, what do you make of the state of our squad? I don't know how familiar you are with Ndoye, but just in general, your thoughts on Forest.
Well, of the signings, definitely Ndoye I'm most familiar with. I think the Brazilian the Botafogo players, I wouldn't say, and I wouldn't pretend to, but Ndoye during the Euros last season, obviously covered Switzerland in that time. He was a player that actually, yeah, it was interesting. I thought he would move then, you know, in terms of, you know, to a big club at that point. Because that's usually what happens. You have a major tournament and then you go, right, this is the time to go. I think players will probably go, right, this is the time to go again. But it's always about the terms of the club you're at and all that sort of stuff. He feels like, I mean, it just feels like absolute straight swap. And funny enough, he's a player now who probably has more, I'd say, behind him than Elanga did when he signed for Forest, you know, in that terms of senior football. So there's that positive. And it's hard to compare players because of what Elanga did at Forest. So it's hard to then say it's a like for like or he's an improvement on that. You need time to prove that. But that to me seems perfectly sensible. I'm happy with that. I just look at that and go, yeah, that works. And then they've had a track record recently getting players from Brazil, and it's turned out okay. You know, Danilo, if he'd had a better injury record, you know, he'd probably still be there. So don't ask me about the finances of how these deals work. I mean, the other side of it, the fact it's Textor involved in this as well, just adds to that. But like I said, I just don't care about any of that stuff. I just want to know, are the players any good and what do they play like when they get on the pitch? And I think in Igor Jesus' case, very interesting. I think it's a good one in that, you know, in terms of the striker department, we kept talking about last season. Do we need that extra striker body? Do you need that extra striker body? This time, yeah, I think this feels right. I think if you're going to take a chance on somebody who people are saying is going to be good, this feels like one that can work nicely. He's not under pressure. I don't think he's under massive pressure to hit the ground running necessarily, because you've got those experienced figures in that forward line who you are expecting just to pick up where they left off. But for him, I think it's a good position to be in. And you know, left back's left back, isn't it? You know, just and a decent performance is a bonus. And if they stand out, sometimes, oh well, you know what effect they've had. But I don't think the expectation is high on fullbacks really.
One other player to ask you about is McAtee. Fabrizio Romano's on, I think, his 30th tweet saying he's close to signing. So I guess it's finally going to happen. Other journalists have said he will, which I think is exciting. There were a couple of people doubting him in terms of switching, from the Man City style to our style, maybe physicality as well. Forest are quite a big, strong team, and I haven't seen everything or all his games, but he is fairly slight of build. What do you make of McAtee's signing?
Definitely slight build. I remember when he was on loan at Sheffield United, I did feel for him a bit. He seemed quite isolated up front because they were struggling in that season. It'd be interesting to ask him what he learned from that experience. And because it's the complete opposite to being at Manchester City, where the platform's there for him to do things. In the games he played last season, and he played a fair amount considering their squad. And I saw him in a couple of games live, and he had a quality in terms of on the ball and the things he was doing, which was the equal of the players around him. He could just work in that system. So his ceiling of technical quality is top level. But it is that, I think it's that ability. Can he burst away from a player? It's the old adage, isn't it, nowadays with the Premier League? How physically capable are you of dealing with that rough and tumble? And if you can't, you have to be of a almost godlike level with your technique. But maybe, I think of Sousa, it's almost like McAtee, while he won't look at it as being that role of player, he could be that player that initially comes on as that player to come on and just make an impression late on and to kill teams off with a pass through when, you're 1-0 up or something. Or if a team's, backs to the wall and he's there to pop up with something special, a free kick, a lovely cross. It could work for him, and I think at the price it's worth a go. I think if that's the reported price, and when I say worth a go, I said I don't care about these financial things. I think it takes the pressure off him. He arrives 20 million. No, like clauses. Who cares about that? That's nothing to do with anybody. What difference does that make? Unless City have got a clause that means they can buy him back for 20 as well, which should be a strange deal to do. I have to say, you'd like to think Forest would have a profit in there if he was to go back. But that would have meant he's done well for the club as well. I think it's a good one to go for. And I've liked when Forest have done signings like this, with Anderson and Hudson-Odoi, players who you just think they're excelling at under 21 level, or they have excelled at under 21 level, and they have the ability. They certainly are good enough to play for Forest, and they're certainly good enough to push Forest on. That'll be nice to see if you can get that core group of English players as well, alongside Brazilians. That's always great. Then you're in a good place, and I don't see anything wrong with this signing at all. From somebody watching football point of view, he's not going to be. If people think he's going to be an Elanga type player, I don't think anyone's under that impression. He's not that type of player. He's not a Hudson-Odoi type of player. That's why I was thinking is Sousa about as close as it comes, because he can do the pressing, he can cover the ground, and that's what. But having watched him a lot, watch a lot of England youth football as well. When he was for the under-21s, I wouldn't say he shined, but he is a senior figure in that team, and they do look to him to make something happen. And I do think it's something that maybe Forest are missing. It's that craft, that player who can, he could come up with a set piece. He could come up with a finish out of nothing. Very much in the City mould. And I would also imagine there'll be Forest supporters thinking, how's he going to cope without the Pep system? Well, he's not really, look at Cole Palmer. The players that can come through at City and that grounding is a good thing. They tend to do quite well when they leave because that technical level is there. They know how to press. They know how to play a tactical system, and he will get a lot more support than he did at Sheffield United. So I just think it's a good move all round. And for City, I can see why they're selling, because I think they want to go for that another big name in the forward line. So to finance that, you can see where they want to recruit quite clearly. They want to go for a wide forward. So it's just all part of the system, isn't it? And if you're going to benefit from it, then so be it.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a good addition, certainly. I think he'll do well for us. I mean, you've obviously seen we can't hit a barn door in pre-season, and I think he might open up a few avenues, pick a few locks against a team like Brentford, who I think are going to make it difficult for us. And West Ham, I mean, West Ham should be better than they were last season, so I think we need this kind of
Really?
player.
Is that? Oh, you said? Do you reckon? What tells you that?
I just think the Fulkrug looks like he's might be fit. I think Callum Wilson's a pretty awful signing, but if Fulkrug stays fit, that's interesting. Who the left wing back who played really well against England, I think he could do really well. Hermanson, I think, is a good goalie. That's the name, isn't it? The one they got from Leicester. Yeah. So I think they're starting to put pieces in jigsaws that Potter likes. They still don't have any legs in midfield, from what I've seen.
That's it's midfield that worries me about West Ham. That's what I would say. I just think that they had several seasons where Declan Rice was the legs in midfield, and there's not any longer legs than Declan Rice in the midfield. So it's not good. It was never going to be a position they were going to fill, but they've never. I don't feel like they've nailed that. And I think Hermanson, I think is I think that's quite a good signing. I think he was probably Leicester's one of Leicester's best players, if not their best player, in the short time they were back in. So yeah, I just think, that midfield is a concern for them. And are they going to be able to blow teams away? Can't really see that. I think they're going to have a lot of mucky games, a lot of games that frustrate their supporters, but then I suppose West Ham could have said that's the case for the last 10 years. So, that's why I said it's a good fixture for us, because, you lose to West Ham. It's annoying. It's frustrating. But at the same time, you think, well, they are another big club who have spent money from time to time and have players that, we might like and whatever. So, yeah, let's see.
Just before I ask you just about the wider Premier League picture, you've led into it nicely there. Just a quick word for, I've got to find the picture because I'm on the wrong slide here. Vesta Blinds sponsor Wednesday's episodes. If you're looking for new windows or shutters, new blinds or shutters made to measure across the East Midlands, they're the people for you. Seb has not got any blinds or shutters behind him, so he clearly should be making a call straight after this to Vesta Blinds. And the shirts have gone as well. Where's the shirts gone? You normally had like some random Ecuador shirt.
I did, yeah. No, I didn't put them up this morning. I can't even remember. I couldn't remember what I had up last time. I tried to change them around, probably because I've just come back and I'm still sorting stuff out. My season's not really ended, I don't think.
Lovely. Wider Premier League, just in general, it feels like we haven't kicked a ball yet, but the top four might be predictable. I don't know. But do you agree with that? And do you see any of the teams really having big seasons? I mean, we talked about West Ham's midfield. I still don't think United have fixed their midfield, but they made some good signings. Do you see the top 5 or 6 being predictable or not?
I don't think. I think this is really difficult to predict. We have a habit of looking back at the previous season and just thinking that will roll on into the next one. So, and obviously, we know last season Liverpool came through to win the title comfortably. I don't think anyone would have predicted that at the start of the season that would happen. So they're this season, people thinking, they've signed these big players, they're just going to run away with it. But then, like I said, you see one game, you see the Community Shield, and I know, again, teams aren't at their top level when they're playing those games, but you could see where teams can hurt Liverpool, for example. Manchester City and Chelsea both played in that competition that seemed to go on forever. Club World Cup, what aspect will that have on them? I know they have a big squad, but we don't know. I mean, I know Rodri was talking about this before the start of last season, and then he had his bad injury, and he's had another knock-on effect. Can you go full pelter like that? What is City's side going to look like? I think Reinders is a really smart signing from them, and they tend to make smart signings, but they are going through a change. That defensively they haven't gone through a massive overhaul, but then that was an issue for them last season. It's all relative, because I don't think there's any doubt they'll finish in the top 4 in my mind, unless issues off the field take precedent. Chelsea, for me, Chelsea's an interesting one. When you spend that much, and I know they've had lots of outgoings as well, people are still slightly treating them as a bit of an outsider or an underdog. And if they were to, not, if they didn't win the league next season, people would be a bit like, oh, okay, that's, okay, they missed out this time, but they're still going places with this young team. Yet other teams have ultimatums about them, and you feel like, if this team doesn't do this, then it's over. You feel like there's a bit of that with Newcastle a bit. You just feel like, if it doesn't work out for them, or even Villa with Emery, if it doesn't work out, are they going to have to move on from that? Are they not allowed to build and be on this process as well? It's like Chelsea are allowed to be on this process, and other sides aren't, which is strange because I don't think they've been in a title race for a while now, Chelsea. But the spending would suggest they should be. If you can't keep on renewing your side like that and adding players and not thinking that, you shouldn't be in. So that's interesting. It's an interesting situation. I don't know how Chelsea fans feel about it, because if you've got players coming in and out, can you ever feel attached to a player enough? But then I suppose lots of teams could feel that way. But I think their signings this season, will they make a difference in terms of seeing them overhaul, City, Arsenal, and Liverpool? Yeah, I don't know. You said that, you felt those four were clearly ahead. I think so, but I think they should be based on the teams on paper. But it won't take much for things to just, one of these teams, and it could be any of the four, to just have a little run of results. It doesn't quite work, and it opens the door for somebody else. Manchester United, absolutely no idea. Don't ask me to predict what they're going to do, because I look at their sign and the system that he plays, and I just think they were the right players for that system. I think having Šeško up front and having Cunha and Mbumo, I think those players fit that. But it's the rest of how things fit. You're moving Bruno Fernandes deeper. How well are your wing backs going to do? I mean, Dorgu, he's been looked good in pre-season, but what does that mean till that first ball is kicked? That back three in defence, what's the makeup of that going to be? I mean, what's the keeper situation? So many questions to be asked about them. Spurs, interesting. Big jump. Europe to contend with as well. Still missing a midfield signing, I think. That central midfield area. That could be the thing that defines it, because I look at it and think if City get Rodri back and they've got Rodri and Reinders in there, and then a player in front, and you could take your pick from some of the players that this is the system they've been playing with, where Doku's been a bit more inside. And I think he's one of the most underappreciated players going. I think sometimes the way people criticize him, and every City game I do, he's the one that just destabilizes defenses and makes things happen. I think he's a player. You imagine him at Forest. I mean, he would just be absolutely electric, and people would love him. I don't understand some of the negativity I heard about him last season. But then seeing Arsenal, Rice and Zubimendi and Ødegaard, if that helps Ødegaard improve, because he wasn't his best last season, that could be the midfield of the league. I mean, the blend there, you've got everything covered, absolutely everything covered. I think Zubimendi's an exceptional player, and he can mix it despite what people say. So you're not going to get an order from me. I've got I don't like doing order predictions when it comes to those teams, because I just think it's about the run. Will one of them get on a 10-match winning run, and that might be enough in this season? Can anybody else break into that top four? They shouldn't really. I don't think, based on this course, they shouldn't do. If I was going to pick one of them, I mean, I don't know why. It's just I don't know why. Something about Tottenham's just making me think, could they? Could they? But I think they're the top four. And the reason I shook my head, I just think, yeah, it's quite obvious. Anyone who gambles outside of that, I think, is making a big play. And you ask yourself, why? What weaknesses are you seeing in those four that makes you think that somebody else is going to sleep in? But 5 Champions League teams, so somebody else can get involved. And also a team can win the Europa League, Matt, can't they?
Certainly can. Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me about Chelsea is they're sort of fourth a bit by default, because if you said how many Chelsea players would get in the City, Liverpool, Arsenal team, take Palmer out of it, who definitely I'm sure you'd find room for him. All that money spent, I still don't think it's many. Like, João Pedro isn't the number 9 in any of those teams. Sanchez isn't the goalkeeper, and you could probably go through pretty much the whole team. Reece James, when he's fit, yeah, but he's not. So, I mean, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo would, because he's class, I think. But my point is, it's only 2 or 3, and they spent all that money, but they're still probably the 4th best team, because every other team's got holes in them, I guess. So,
yeah, and they just have so many. you feel like they're constantly bringing talent in, so there's never a feeling of, certainly in an attacking sense. I think defensively they're obviously still got issues, but they, I think that you have. But I do think they're a team that could take advantage of a slip up from one of those other three relatively, and it's within that pocket. I think Arsenal could be in a position again where they're struggling to break teams down. That might not change, but they are mixing up their play. It'd be interesting this opening weekend, because I want to try and see as many of the teams as I can from this opening weekend, because that's the start. That's how you intend to play for the season. That's teams look to go bang. This is us, because you want to get out of the blocks, because you can cope with a dodgy middle period if you've started well. So yeah, we'll learn. We'll know so much more in a week's time. That's when you should have invited me on.
Last question, because I've kept you, and your previous answer says you can't answer this one anyway because we haven't seen them play. But of the bottom three, it feels like the promoted teams are having a go. But I think I'll put we did our predictions yesterday, and I'll just put mine up because I'm pretty sure I did them quickly. But I'm sure I said the promoted teams will go down. I thought, because they're just playing so much catch up, even with Wolves and Brentford. I think Burnley and Sunderland are really up against it. I don't know. Do you agree? Can you see? We've discussed Brentford at length. What about a Wolves or someone? Is there a team that worries you further than that?
That's what it's about. It's not about those three and what they do. It's about who is the team that's going to be dragged into that. That's what we're looking at. Even last season when Wolves started badly, you just felt doing their games, you just thought they're still better than the bottom three. So are we going to look at Wolves, Brentford, maybe Bournemouth? Who else could be in the mix? It's a tough one. I think Everton look like they're getting their act together. Probably tough one. I mean, you have Grealish and Barry coming into the team, for example. That's promising for them. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see them getting dragged into it. I don't see Fulham getting dragged into it. I don't see Palace. I was going to say Manchester United and Spurs there, but yeah, it's just not going to happen, because the investment these teams can make to stay. Fulham have kept players. Manchester United and Spurs have invested. So yeah, Wolves, Brentford, Bournemouth. Although Bournemouth still have their front line, frontline midfield still the same. So, and they might still sign players. Stability, I think, is so important for these teams, though. Don't lose too many, and keep your key players, and just like Fulham, just stay in the mix. So it's Brentford, Wolves, and Bournemouth. Well, I don't even want to say Bournemouth. Brentford and Wolves. I think I've said their name about 50 times in the last minute. So that suggests that we're looking at those teams. Oh gosh, it's so tough. I want to see Sunderland play. I covered Sunderland games last season. I covered Leeds games last season. I didn't actually cover Burnley last season. I was astounded by their record, defensive record. That would be. Let's see if that transfers. Again, they've lost, players in that unit, of course. So can he do that again with the replacements and with the jump up in quality and with that speed that players talk about when they go up to the Premier League? Just the speed of actions is just a step up, and that's tough. Are they going to end up just banked in their own half? Yeah, but Burnley the most vulnerable based off that. Pressure on Leeds if they don't start well. Manager, will he be gone soon if they don't start well? Sunderland, as I said, I watched them last season. I thought they were good teams, started to stumble near the end. The playoff final was amazing, the way that ended. But you always just think, it was the same with Southampton the season before when they got through. I just thought, is this team ready to know what's about to come? And they've looked to invest. They've got some experienced players in. So let's see. Again, I'm big on this, Matt. I'm big on seeing teams play and feel how they approach games and perform, because it's all in relation to, is this working for them? And because they will stick to this way of playing for several games at the start of the season. All teams do it. Even if it doesn't go well in the first game, they'll try and stick with that in the second, because it's what they've been working on all summer, So we'll see based on the first few games, and I'll get a better feeling. I just thought last season, early doors, even when Wolves started bad, I just thought that bottom three is gone. I just think they just don't have enough. They're not going to score enough goals. They're shipping too many goals. Doesn't matter what philosophy the manager puts in, it's not going to do it, because you need to have firepower and you need to have defensive stability and you need to be physically able to match it. And I think Forest actually, weirdly, the back end of the season, it started to loosen up at the back and started to feel a bit tighter up front. But I just think that was the circumstance. I just think they thought, we're closing in on something big here. Probably Marinakis around there going, we're going to do this, boys, and it's just like, oh God, where are we? So I think it might have felt a bit calmer if they didn't have that on the line, but then they'd work to that position. So yeah, we'll see.
I know, you're right. I mean, you never know, do you? You look like, I watched a bit of Scottish football because no Premier League. Like, Rangers have drawn their first 2 games. Russell Hines absolutely throwing the players under the bus in the media, which is normally the thing you do after 20 games. So that was interesting. Yeah, you just don't know.
You got to see teams play. Forget about pre-season. Pre-season, managers and the teams, they'll be the best players don't want to get injured. They just go through the motions a lot of the time. Managers also want to keep some cards close to their chest. It's a fitness exercise. It's a conditioning thing. It's a thing to experiment with, and it's a growing thing in terms of the coffers for the club, in terms of where they play and the teams they play. So it just doesn't mean anything. Like, you could have the most amazing pre-season, and then you lose the first game. Nobody remembers. Can you tell me a pre-season result from any other team but Forest ever outside of this summer?
Oh God, no.
No,
there's one I go back to where Leyton Orient thrashed Newcastle. That was it. That was the only one that I remember. And I even got the context wrong of that, because I said Newcastle got relegated that season, but they'd actually already been relegated and they won the championship. So it does show that you lose 5-0 to Leyton Orient, you can still get promoted, etc., etc.
Who cares? I mean, didn't the other day, Liverpool played Athletic Club twice, just to make sure everybody could get a game in the squad on the same evening. I mean, what sort of, that to me seems sensible in terms of getting teams, but it just shows you can't read anything into any of this. Youth team players get a game, people get excited, you don't see them again for the rest of the season. They go on loan. Players who are about to leave, staying fit for their moves, new signings bedding in, but again, nobody wants to get in. What was the point in giving absolutely everything in pre-season? What does it prove to you, unless you're trying to get into the starting 11, and the best players know they're already in the starting 11 most weeks? So yeah, as you can tell, I give long answers to your questions sometimes, but that's because I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible. Pre-season doesn't matter. All the guff in the summer, all the chat about how clubs are run and this and that. No, we don't really understand any of it. They don't tell us enough. It's all behind a curtain, because it's boring, but also very influential. So it's designed that way so that we don't really understand it. And if everybody knew how finances worked perfectly, then we'd all be in a better place, wouldn't we? Because we'd know what we were doing with our money. But these people, to them, it's a money game. And to us, it shouldn't be about that. We shouldn't be saying, I'll end on this essentially. Whenever I see supporters going, oh, if we sell this player, that will give us 10 million for this. Or if we sell that player, it will give us 10 million for that. And we're spreading the payments over this. It's just not how it works, because you're not taking into account wages saved by selling a player or signing a player on. When you renew a player's contract, that could be more expensive than buying a new player. So you don't know the full finances of a player's move. So don't try and play accountant. And accountancy is dull, and apologies to anyone who works in that. But that's essentially why people get hired to be accountants, because most people don't want to look at that stuff. And so it's quite a good area to get into if you are interested in that stuff.
Good, lovely note to end up. I mean, if we had more time, I said to Seb, and I say this to every guest, let's do 40 minutes and we've done 55. But we could have talked about Barcelona playing Villarreal in the States and how that's another nail in the coffin and all that kind of stuff. But that's one for another day. Last thing I'll just say on pre-season quickly, I said this the other day, just devoid of intensity. Like, I watched some EFL games. It's almost like a different sport watching championship games versus pre-season friendlies. And the Premier League will be like that. If it's 88 minutes gone, you're playing Brentford and he's 0-0 or 1-0 down, then you're going to go for it. If it's pre-season friendly, you're not. And I know we haven't scored any goals, but it's still totally different context for me. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Doesn't mean anything.
No. Right. If you've enjoyed this, and I certainly have, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. If you're a member, you'll get early access to this, and also for Patreon, or a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify would be great. Back tomorrow with part 1 of our opposition fans. I've got one more to speak to, and then I'll edit this afternoon. Then part 2 on Thursday, match preview on Friday with Emily and Lewis McGugan, and then Saturday opposition preview with Billy Grant, Billy the Bee. Do you know him?
I know of him. I don't know him personally.
Yeah. Nice guy. Absolutely ebullient. Is that the word? Full of life, full of probably the opposite of me. So join us for that. And then Sunday is post-match show. Right. Seb, thank you for this. What's your first Premier League game, by the way? Have you got one?
Forest.
Oh, of course. That's why you're here. Oh, yeah.
I am at St Andrews and at Wrexham as well before then. But yeah, it starts for Forest this weekend. So straight back into that. And then
so you're doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
No, Birmingham's tomorrow. It's Carabao
okay.
Cup, which actually has already started. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Oh yeah, so Oldham had to play a prelim or some nonsense.
Yeah, it's just it's to sort out the numbers because in the next round, European team again, really dull stuff. Just watch your teams play and enjoy the show, and it all begins this weekend, doesn't it?
Excellent. Right, you can catch if you don't have a ticket, and I'm lucky enough I do, but if you don't, you can catch the game with Seb's comms on Sky. So do check that out. And otherwise, thanks for your company. Do hit like, as I say. Thanks to Seb, and if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.